Taking a stern view of a speech in Parliament made by Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, where he criticized
Lee Hsien Loong, where the H in the second name is more silent, Lee Hsien Loong, and that's the way to pronounce the name of the Prime Minister of Singapore, who used some examples to make a valid statement. Of course, he quoted Jawaharlal Nehru and how politics has turned out in India, and there is nothing wrong with it. Of course, he made statements related to Israel and the British Partygate as well to state a point. However, the Indian media and thin-skinned Indian media commentators just wanted to make a scene out of it. I would say, politicians and biases are such that they just can't handle the truth. So let's first hear and see the context in which it was stated. After which we could go through all the thin-skinned counter-statements. We shall explore it with an impartial view, with proper comments and opinions.
the decline of Nehru's India to the present, where Indian members of Parliament face criminal charges. The Ministry of External Affairs summoned Singapore's High Commissioner to India, Simon Wong, on Thursday. The comments were raised by officials with Mr. Wong, according to government sources, who said Mr. Lee's comments were uncalled for and unacceptable. Delivering a speech in the Parliament of Singapore on the 15th of February on a report on the Committee of Privileges, which was looking into charges of lying by members of the country's largest opposition party, the Workers' Party, Mr. Loong gave examples of the decline in political probity amongst elected politicians in India and Israel today, and even referred to the UK's Partygate scandal over officials' parties during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Most countries are founded and start off on the basis of high ideals and noble values. But more often than not, beyond the founding leaders and the pioneer generation, over decades and generations, gradually things change. Things start off with passionate intensity. The leaders who fought for and won independence are often exceptional individuals of great courage, immense culture, and outstanding ability. They came through the crucible of fire and emerge as leaders of men and nations. They are the David Ben-Gurions, the Jawaharlal Nehrus, and we have our own too. Imbued with enormous personal prestige, they strive to meet the high expectations of their peoples, to build a brave new world and shape a new future for their peoples and for their countries. But beyond that initial fervor, succeeding generations often find it hard to sustain this momentum and drive. They start out as healthy democracies with idealism and zeal, but over time, the tone of the society changes. All too easily, a slip here, a blind eye there, a fudge, a trim, and gradually things go downhill. The texture of politics changes. Respect for politicians declines. After a while, the electorate comes to think, this is the norm and you cannot expect better. And so, standards get debased, trust is eroded, and the country declines further. Many political systems today would be quite unrecognizable to their founding leaders. Ben-Gurion's Israel has morphed into one which can barely form a government, despite 4 general elections in 2 years. Meanwhile, a stream of senior politicians and officials in Israel face a litany of criminal charges. Some have gone to jail. While Nehru's India has become one where, according to media reports, almost half the MPs in the LOK Sabha have criminal charges pending against them, including charges of rape and murder. Though it is also said that many of these allegations are politically motivated.
And joining us live at this point is Ambassador Manju Seth, a former diplomat. We also have Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, joining us live. Pathikrit Payne, strategic and international affairs expert, is with us live. Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, also joins the broadcast live. Let me bring you in here, Joyita, on the nature of these comments made in the Singapore Parliament. Do you believe it's unfortunate the way Singapore is commenting on India's internal affairs?
In fact, it is unfortunate for anybody to comment on what is happening, internal matters of any country. For that matter, I'm certain the Prime Minister of Singapore is not going to appreciate about, Singapore if we start. And I'm certain Singapore is not an epitome of democracy. So Singapore is not an epitome of what a society should be like. So first of all, this extreme tone of superiority that this gentleman has taken is a little off, if you ask me. And then what are you talking about? You are talking about India. You are talking about India, which is now one of the largest nations in the world in terms of GDP. It is a big military power. And the way you are talking, you are making us sound like a banana republic. For God's sake. And the thing is, you see, don't cherry pick. He should not be cherry picking some news item about some MP or something. Okay, there may have been news items. But at the same time, when you are talking about these are criminal MPs, half of these cases, or perhaps the majority of these cases are because of, some kind of political, which he has mentioned. But even then, that also does not cover the kind of cases that these MPs, anybody in the political life will get. That is a part of quote unquote, if I can use the word, risk of being politics. It's one of the professional hazards of politicians, that someone or the other will lodge some kind of a case somewhere. Even taking out a procession, and maybe there is some kind of a trouble over there, that also may result in a criminal case. So the thing is, you see, first of all, he needs to get a better idea of India, and secondly, you should just stay out of India. And especially, I did not like the tone. The tone is totally wrong. And considering there's a huge diaspora, Indian diaspora in Singapore, he had no business. He has no business talking about India like that.
Indeed. And, Ambassador Manju said India has not obviously taken it lying down. We summoned the Singapore High Commissioner, conveyed obviously our angst, conveyed the fact that India does not appreciate these kind of comments. Do you believe that was necessary? And are you satisfied at what we've said so far, or do you believe we need to step it up a notch?
I think the Prime Minister of Singapore has been a little undiplomatic, and as she said, just picking up on a comment like this, even if it's based on media reports, he should not have, I think, said it, because it's a little undiplomatic and not done normally. And he's only spoken of 2 or 3 countries. But of course, he was, in a larger context, he's talking about the decline of democracy. That we have to give to him, that what he was speaking in general terms is okay, but to have pointed out India or Israel or any other country, I think in India is particularly not, has been very sensitive and rightly so, about comments about what is happening within the country. And as Joyita said, it is possible, most of these cases may have been, very motivated, politically motivated. But it is still a very undiplomatic thing for the Prime Minister of Singapore to have said. And he may have tried to, caution his own country from that it should not move down a path of deteriorating democracy or democratic values. But I think referring to us or to India or to any other country was not called for that.
Yes, Pathikrit Payne come in here on, on the nature of comments, of course, made. Reportedly, it wasn't just India that was the target of this speech. The Partygate scandal in 10 Downing Street was also raked up. We also do believe Israel politicians were targeted. What do you make of the context of remarks made in Singapore, and how should India be viewing this?
Uday, first of all, let me say it that I have stayed in Singapore for quite some time, and beyond India, it's almost like a second home for me. For a long time, it has been like that. It's a very beautiful city-state. It's very disciplined. Its education system is very good. But, as Joyita said, it's not something that you can define as an epitome of democracy, because you don't simply have free speech. You're not simply allowed to criticize or express your viewpoints in Singapore. So, in spite of the fact that Singapore has been considered for a long time as like an European state within Asia, today, it does not have the kind of complexities that India has. The kind of complexities and challenges that India has. A country like China has a very authoritarian regime. We have reached where we have reached, while being a democracy, and that itself is a huge achievement. The Prime Minister of Singapore mentioned about Nehru. I don't want to comment anything against Nehru, but long after Nehru was gone, we were on the verge of being a bankrupt country in 1991. And from that time onwards, in less than 30 years, we became a $3 trillion economy. In terms of purchasing power parity, we become an $11 trillion economy today. And we are one of the very few countries which has been able to administer, 1.75 billion vaccine doses, which is unprecedented except for China. Today, we are known for our proficiency in the realm of pharmaceutical industry, proficiency in the realm of IT industry. We are one of the largest manufacturers of two-wheelers in the world. These are achievements of India. We are at par, or in certain respect in frugal engineering, we are better than even the Western Europe or America when it comes to space. These are achievements of India long after Nehru was gone, and these have been done by the present regime or the previous regime in the last 30-40 years. That is something that the Prime Minister of Singapore, with all due respect, simply cannot ignore. Singapore does not face the threat of war every day the way we face. Singapore does not have, let me tell you very honestly, Singapore does not have the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that India has. You just count the number of unicorns that India has. More than 50% people in India are self-employed. You don't have something like that in Singapore, where there's a huge dependence on the state to create and give employment. It's not like that in India. So there are things, complexities that every country has. United States, considered to be the oldest democracy in the world, the biggest powerhouse in the world in terms of GDP, in terms of military, has its own challenges. There are gunfights that happen. There's a gun culture. There is a drug culture. It doesn't mean that those things are good. But, bigger you are, you would face challenges. Of course, there are problems of, criminal nexus in Indian politics. And you see, in the last 1 decade, a lot of young people have taken interest in politics. The fact that a lot of young people in shows of newsx come and actually discuss political issues, policy issues, mean that the younger generation, new generation are taking interest, and India is actually changing, aspiring to be a $5 trillion economy by 2032 and probably a $30-40 trillion economy by 2050. These are the things that Singapore simply cannot ignore. Let me tell you one last point today. In Singapore, where I was studying, in most of the seminars, I'm talking about a decade back, not even today, in most of the seminars, every time China was mentioned, the only other country they mentioned was India. They still, look up to India as a counter to China. So while on one hand you actually expect India to come out as a vibrant democracy and counter the Chinese hegemony, at the same time, if you criticize and, look down at India, that is not true. That is not something right, because India has, everything said and done, one of the best election mechanism and election process that even America does not have. We have seen the manipulations that happen. In Singapore, there's a place called Little India. That Little India does not look like Singapore. There are and other political parties in Singapore do not get the chance to actually speak freely and ask for votes. That is a question that should be asked to Singapore. Again, I say, it's a great country, but its population is 1/3 that of Delhi. The kind of complexities that we have, I don't think even Singapore would have managed it. We have managed it in spite of being a democracy, and that is the achievement that we have made. Uday.
Absolutely. Let me quickly go across to Gautam Mukherjee as well. Gautam Mukherjee, pretty unfair, don't you believe, these comments made on India, on our polity, on our politicians? At the end of the day, Singapore has a lot to learn, particularly on democracy from India. So this criticism a bit unfair, do you believe?
I thought it was a pretty facile speech. It didn't seem to have any nuancing, any depth. I wonder why he made such a speech in the first place. If we are talking about how democracy evolves, we have to go back to the Athens city-state and talk in terms of how it all began. And even there, it didn't really last. What became is an evolution of various things, authoritarian tendencies as in the foundation of Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew was no sweetheart. He pushed, prodded, bullied, whipped people not long ago, whipped foreigners for what? I don't know. If you had water patches in your lawn, you were fined. I mean, it's all very well with a little city-state like that. Now, as far as India goes, one point that really sort of rankled with me about this business of its pristine Snow Whiteism. When Nehru took over, there were scandals galore in Nehru's time. Nehru himself may not have had his hand in the till, but there were plenty of his cronies, many famous scandals of the time, even in the first few years of our, independence and early democracy. So that's why I call it facile. I think it's a bit stupid. David Ben-Gurion and then say, can't form a government. It's got nothing to do with the evolution of democracy. I wonder who wrote his speech. He would be well advised to fire him.
Okay. Let me quickly ask you then also, Gautam Mukherjee, do you believe this is the China influence speaking?
That's always the elephant in the room. It could be, are they trying to draw in Xi, or are they trying to get Chinese investment from Hong Kong and people in the mainland who want to flee Xi and his depredations? Again, it doesn't make sense. It needs to be a much better nuanced thing than to a party gate, honestly. I mean, that's local politics. Even the British are bored by the whole idea. And you want to internationalize such a thing. They were saying Rishi Sunak should take over, but Rishi Sunak was at these parties. So it gets very silly. And to use it as an example internationally, I don't know what's happened to this man.
Okay.
Can I just speak one thing?
Yes, please, Pathikrit.
No, because I have stayed in Singapore, I'll just share some of my experience. The most boring thing in Singapore is to open the morning newspaper. Nobody buys it because there is nothing in the newspaper. You're not allowed to criticize the government or any policy. Can you imagine? Secondly, when he was talking about Nehru, Nehru's socialistic India is gone. That whole thing has collapsed. It's a new India been done by everybody. Yeah, I'm not discrediting Congress. Even the successive Congress regimes after 91 followed economic policies and took India to a level, and BJP from the 2014, even the states have evolved. In spite of all the challenges, we see this country has developed. Which country has been able to give 80 crore people free ration for more than 1.5 years and free vaccines, in spite of all the challenges? So these are the things that Singapore should admire and respect. Last but not the least, look at the kind of art and culture this country's vibrancy has created, and it still continues to create. One of the biggest challenges in Singapore, Uday, it's a great country, I'll repeat, but it does not create this lack of creativity in that country, because in an authoritarian regime that they have, with all due respect, it does not create or, inspire creativity. You don't find great films, great poems, great artistic things coming out. These are the things for which India, in spite of all the challenges, we don't deny it. I think there has to be mutual respect. We respect Singapore. They should also respect that our foreign exchange reserve today is twice of that of their GDP. Uday.
Yes, let me also quickly go back to Ambassador Manju said at this point as well. Ambassador Manju said at the end of the day, there's a lot that Singapore can learn from India, isn't there? As far as, of course, our democratic traditions go, as far as, the fact how we've sustained democracy over the years, how we have, made economic progress, tried to, of course, end economic disparity as well. There's a lot that Singapore can learn from India rather than criticize us merely on the basis of some cases which have been put on our parliamentarians, which, as the Singaporean PM also says in his speech, may be politically motivated.
Absolutely. They, of course, as Pathikrit said, their democracy is completely different from vibrant and noisy democracy that we have, and which has been flourishing over the years in spite of so many different governments at the center. And even in the States, we have still, our democracy is completely different, and it's not a controlled democracy like in Singapore. And they do need to really learn from us. And he's very right when he says the creativity and the original thinking and innovation in frugal engineering that we have. I think Singapore certainly needs to learn from India, the Singaporean government also, of how to manage so many disparate elements, so many disparate, demands on the government, on resources, and how to learn and be a vibrant democracy from India. Definitely, and India has rightly, of course, taken it up with their High Commissioner. But I think we can also point out to them that they should learn from India how to be more democratic in their overall. To learn from the democratic ethos in India, let me put it that way.
Okay. Joyita Basu, do you also see a China influence in these comments? What do you believe was the motivation behind making them? What should be read between the lines?
Well, Uday, to me, frankly, it seems, if you're talking about the China influence, the very authoritarian streak in Singapore is, of course, a result of the Chinese influence in terms of, these are anyway all Chinese origin people. So, but at the same time, no, in this particular speech, this particular gentleman comes across as a bit woolly-headed, head in the clouds, out of touch with reality and geopolitics also. And so he comes across, he's trying to be perhaps an idealist, talking through his hat. So no, I really don't see a Chinese influence in it, but this is more of a, what should I say, he just decided to speak, and he must have picked up, or maybe he has read 3 books and he thinks that, wow, what is going on is, frankly, this is totally out of touch with reality. As Pathikrit also mentioned, if you look at Singapore's population, it is less than 60 lakhs. Okay, less than 60 lakhs. What does it mean? I think maybe he should think, in this particular Prime Minister, should think, listen, in any Indian city, he would have been considered a mayor. Okay, not even the national, he wouldn't be a Prime Minister or a President, he would have been the mayor of a city. So perhaps he should try to think like a way a statesman should think, a leader of a country should think, and not be, frankly, he comes across as thinking, his level of thinking comes across as something very, very, if I can use the word, municipal. Sorry for this. Yeah, because you see, what is Singapore? What is Singapore known as, famous for? Because it is pretty, it's clean, it has got nice buildings, it has got, lots of these companies have offices and all, but beyond that, what is Singapore? Okay, so I think the thinking level is also of the municipal level, and it's showing.
Yeah, apologies, Uday, if you just give me 10 seconds more.
Very quickly, yeah.
Yeah. Uday, just as we need to learn from Singapore how PSU should function, Singapore Telecom, Singapore International Airlines, they're all public sector undertakings, state-owned. Similarly, Singapore has a lot to learn from India's vibrancy, of its entrepreneurial culture, the manner in which, in spite of several challenges, bureaucratic red tapeism, our industry has flourished, explored, gone global, taken over global companies, and today India is about to become the next generation manufacturing hub of the world. We have done it, and we have to learn a lot of things from Singapore. Likewise, they need to understand and learn how individual entrepreneurship can excel, which is the biggest challenge of Singapore. I repeat, it's a great country, but I think they should study a little more before commenting like this.
Okay, let's leave it at that. We've run completely out of time. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.